In ancient Israel, the legal and religious framework was closely intertwined. Unlike modern legal systems where law and religion are often distinct, in Israelite society, religious authorities played a critical role in legal adjudication. Among the most significant of these authorities were the priestly courts, which functioned as both judicial and ritual oversight bodies. These courts, typically led by the priests, Kohanim, and occasionally including Levites, were central to maintaining the covenantal order prescribed in the Torah. Their authority, procedures, and jurisdiction reflected the broader worldview of Israelite society, where law, morality, and cultic practice were inseparable. Origins and biblical foundations. The foundation for priestly courts can be traced to the Torah, particularly the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These texts outline not only religious observances, but also civil and criminal responsibilities assigned to the priestly class. In Exodus 18, Moses' father-in-law Jethro advises the delegation of judicial authority to capable men to prevent overburdening a single leader. Among these appointed judges, priests were tasked with overseeing issues of ritual purity, sacrifices, and violations of religious law. The priestly court, therefore, emerged as a specialized judicial body addressing matters directly linked to religious obligations and temple service. Leviticus 10, dealing with the deaths of Nadab and Abihu for offering unauthorized fire, illustrates the priest's role in maintaining divine law. The text emphasizes adherence to ritual regulations and the consequences of deviation, setting a precedent for priestly adjudication. Similarly, Numbers 18 and 19 delineate the duties of priests in cultic administration and the management of purity laws, reinforcing their judicial authority in both ritual and communal matters. Composition and structure. Priestly courts were composed primarily of Kohanim, descendants of Aaron, and sometimes Levites who assisted in ritual duties. The high priest, or Kohen Gadol, held the highest religious authority and, in certain cases, presided over judicial matters with national significance. For routine cases, a council of priests or a smaller tribunal would render decisions. The structure resembled a tiered system. Local priestly judges might handle disputes at the community level, while major religious offenses or questions about temple practice were escalated to the central priestly authority, particularly in Jerusalem. The Sanhedrin, although more commonly associated with later rabbinic jurisprudence, may have had precursors in these priestly tribunals. Early texts suggest that priestly courts were advisory and interpretive bodies, providing guidance on how to apply divine law to complex or ambiguous situations. Their authority was both legal and symbolic, reinforcing the covenant between Israel and Yahweh. Jurisdiction and functions. The jurisdiction of priestly courts primarily encompassed ritual purity, sacrificial regulations, and religious observance, although some overlap with civil and criminal law existed. Specific areas included 1. Temple rituals and sacrifices. Priestly courts monitored the proper performance of sacrifices, determining the acceptability of offerings and ensuring the correct execution of rituals. Levitical laws specified procedures for burnt offerings, sin offerings, and peace offerings, which required priestly oversight to maintain covenantal fidelity. 2. Purity and defilement. Priests adjudicated cases involving ritual impurity, including contact with corpses, leprosy, and dietary infractions. Numbers 5:1-4, for example, emphasizes the necessity of removing impurities from the camp to preserve communal holiness. The priestly court could order purification rites, quarantine, or other corrective measures, reflecting the integration of health, morality, and religious observance. 3. Tithes and offerings. Priests had authority over the collection and management of tithes, ma'aser, and other offerings. Malfunctioning or misappropriation of sacred funds could be addressed in priestly courts, which acted as both accountants and adjudicators. 4. Moral and religious transgressions. Certain transgressions, particularly idolatry, sexual immorality, or desecration of the sanctuary, fell under priestly jurisdiction. In these cases, priests would not only issue penalties, but also provide ritual remedies, such as sacrifices or purification ceremonies, linking law enforcement with spiritual restoration. 5. Oracular and divinatory functions. Some priestly courts served as intermediaries between the people and the divine. They interpreted omens, dreams, and other divine signs in order to guide legal decisions or communal actions. Such practices underscore the dual role of priests as both religious and judicial authorities. Procedures and legal principles. The procedural framework of priestly courts, as inferred from biblical texts, combined formal legal rules with interpretive discretion. The Torah emphasizes principles such as witness testimony, proportionality in punishment, and the requirement for impartiality. Deuteronomy 17:8-13 prescribes that difficult cases are to be brought before the central court with strict adherence to precedent and the law. Witnesses played a crucial role in priestly adjudication, particularly for moral or ritual offenses. The courts required multiple witnesses for conviction, reflecting a concern for accuracy and fairness. Punishments ranged from ritual restitution to corporal penalties, but the overarching goal was to maintain covenantal fidelity rather than merely enforce civil compliance. The integration of ritual and legal authority meant that priestly courts often relied on symbolic acts to enforce decisions. For instance, offering sacrifices or performing purification rites were considered both corrective and punitive, illustrating a system where spiritual restoration was inseparable from legal judgment. Interaction with other legal authorities. Priestly courts did not operate in isolation. Kings, prophets, and elders also exercised authority, sometimes overlapping with priestly functions. For example, during the monarchy, priests served as advisors to kings on religious and legal matters, ensuring that political decisions aligned with divine law. Prophets, in contrast, often acted as moral critics, challenging both royal and priestly practices when they violated covenantal principles. This dynamic created a multi-layered legal system in which priestly courts were central but not absolute. Historical evolution and decline. The role of priestly courts evolved over time. During the First Temple period, centralized in Jerusalem, priests exercised considerable influence over religious and legal life. After the Babylonian exile, the priesthood regained authority in the Second Temple period, emphasizing ritual purity, temple administration, and interpretation of the Torah. Texts such as Ezra and Nehemiah reflect the post-exilic priestly concern with religious reform and adherence to law, highlighting the court's ongoing judicial function in community governance. With the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, the priestly court's central role diminished. Rabbinic authorities gradually assumed legal and interpretive responsibilities, transforming the judicial landscape. Nevertheless, the legacy of priestly courts persisted in the halakhic system, influencing Jewish law and practice for centuries. Significance in Israelite society. Priestly courts were more than judicial bodies. They were guardians of Israel's covenantal identity. By regulating ritual observance, moral conduct, and communal purity, they maintained the social and religious cohesion of the Israelite people. Their decisions reinforced the notion that law and religion were inseparable, and that obedience to divine commandments was both a legal obligation and a spiritual imperative. The courts also exemplified the principle of centralized yet accessible justice. While major cases required consultation with high authorities, local priestly judges allowed for resolution at the community level, balancing authority with responsiveness. This model influenced later Jewish legal traditions, shaping concepts of judicial hierarchy, procedural fairness, and the integration of ethical and religious norms. Conclusion. Priestly courts in ancient Israel represent a unique fusion of law, religion, and communal governance. Rooted in the Torah and operationalized through the priesthood, these courts maintained ritual purity, enforced moral norms, and guided the people in covenantal fidelity. Their jurisdiction encompassed temple rituals, purity laws, moral transgressions, and the administration of sacred resources, reflecting the inseparability of legal and religious authority in Israelite society. Though their institutional power waned after the destruction of the Second Temple, their principles and practices left a lasting imprint on Jewish jurisprudence, illustrating the enduring significance of priestly authority in shaping both law and communal identity. Sources: 1. Milgram, J. 2004, Leviticus 1-16, A New Translation with Introduction and Commentary, New York, Doubleday. Lieberman, S. 1962, Hebrew Inscriptions from the First Temple Period, Cambridge, Harvard University Press. 3. Wenham, G.J. 1979, The Book of Leviticus, Grand Rapids, Eerdmans. 4. Wright, G.E. 1975, The Old Testament Against Its Environment, Philadelphia, Fortress Press. 5. Grab LL, 2004, A History of the Jews and Judaism in the Second Temple Period. London, T&T Clark. 6. Safrai S. and Stern M. 1974, The Jewish People in the First Century, Historical Geography, Political History, Social, Cultural, and Religious Life and Institutions. Philadelphia, Fortress Press. 7. Devoir R. 1961, Ancient Israel, Its Life and Institutions. London,